Hello everybody, hopefully you guys are having a good day. My name is Eddie, welcome back to the channel. I'm going to be doing another one of my stand-up videos where I go over a feature I've been working on and explain my thought process and why I did the things that I did. Hopefully you guys are loving these videos, so if you are, give it a thumbs up, it helps out a lot. Leave any comments down below or any questions or any feedback, any changes you guys want to see. I read them all. And subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss out on any future content. Okay, so let's get into it. Give me a moment here, actually. I'm a little parched today. Okay. Stops to think, and let's get into it. So in our last video, we were going over all the data that we were getting from our API. We would go to our API and get a bunch of Kubernetes cluster information about the nodes and things that are going on the cluster. In this video, I'm going to be trying to create a little visualization, or I have created a visualization for the CPU usage. Now it's not very complete yet. This is very early, but I think it kind of shows off what it is we're doing. So I'm just going to give you the demo. So we have a little bar graph here. It's supposed to be like a little gauge. And when I add a pod in here, we should see that gauge go up. Hopefully it does. I have it set on, I think, like 30-second. Okay, there we go. Yep. You see it pops up, and I can delete that node, and hopefully it will go down. Boop, boop, boop. Yep, look, it goes down. It go down. And then I believe I have a describe here somewhere. We have the cluster where that is going on, so you guys can see here that our CPU usage is at 5%, and when I put that deployment out, our CPU usage bumps up to 15% and our bar graph goes up. So let's delete that little Apache server, clear this out, and let's just go over the feature. So one of the things that we have to do is we created a new router for cluster API routes. So this is going to be where I'm going to be kind of putting all of our cluster routes and things that we're doing with cluster specific data that we want. And this one is cluster info is the name of the route. We take in two things, an auth token and a config ID. The ID is going to be the ID in the database for the cluster config, although that kind of has to change later, somewhere down the road, because they're not really cluster configs, they're more like cluster contexts. Yeah. And then we run a mutation on it. We have our input data that we got from up here after the validation, and we just run a API call, an Axios post over to our microservice that returns all that data. We went over that in the last episode, so go check that video out if you haven't. And then we return the data if everything's all good, or we give an error if not. Cool, so that is that side of things. So how did we do this little ring animation? And the way that we did that is a couple of use effects right now. Right now it's really ugly, and I am gonna fix this up, make it a little bit better. But for now, we create that use effect with or that mutation, so that we can call the server's API route that ends up calling over the data from the microservice, and we call that get cluster info. On success, we set the cluster data with the data that we got back from the API. We need an auth token. So anytime that we update the cluster data, I also want to go and get an auth token right now. This is a sandbox, so we're not really doing authentication and actually using the authentication. So I just need this here so that when I go over to our API, we can get data because we need an auth token. And the way that we get our auth token is by we validate the refresh token, and when the refresh token is validated, it's gonna give us back an authentication token. Then we use an effect again on an interval, and this is where we run our mutation. So every, I believe this is 10 seconds or so, I believe, we're going to run our mutation, and we give it in a auth token, and right now we're hard coding that config ID. But when we're building out our panel, my idea is to have kind of like multiple things. Let me see if I can just draw here. So yeah, I imagine it would look, oh, this is not the thing I wanted, but I imagine it would be multiples of these, some information out here, and then our little gauge graph. And I kind of dig the like Apple Ring thing that you get on the little Apple Watches. So I kind of want to see if I can build that out later. But I imagine that there's going to be multiples of these because you're going to have multiple clusters. So we'll do like, you know, more of these. Look at my beautiful art. Yes, like that. And then maybe some more information down here. Cool. So we do that, we get the data, and right now we're getting it for 1, but you can imagine that we're going to do a request to get all of our contacts and then maybe show the top 3 clusters here, or maybe like a set of favorite clusters. We'll go and grab all of those and then grab the metrics for them and then display them out to the user. We get all that data, and then obviously when we get back the success, that's when we set the cluster data here. Then we need one more use effect to actually update the data on the UI. And here, if we have the cluster data, then what we're doing here is we're getting a CPU value, and that cluster data, right now there's an M in it for the, I forget what it is. It's milli CPUs or something like that, or some sort of metric for how many, but I know that 1 core equals 1,000 M's or whatever. In 2 cores we have 2,000 M's. So we replace that, we strip that M out just so that we get a number, and then right now we just divide the two, the cluster capacity and the cluster CPU, to get a percentage number. And we set this to a stroke dash offset right here. We subtract 1 from it so that we can get a decimal and then divide it by 2. Just doing some math to kind of normalize the data into a way that is gonna represent this really well. Make it into a 1 or 0 to 1 value, right? And then everything in between, like 0.5 and 0.75 and all that kind of stuff. That's what we're doing here. And then anytime that the cluster data updates, we want you to update the ring data as well. So that's what we do with this use effect. And then right now we just have an SVG with a circle, a circumference X of 50 and a circumference Y of 50. A radius of, right now it's set to a default of 45. The circumference is just, if math, pi r squared, right? But right now we just have that 45 hard coded. But yeah, it's just, pi times 2 times 45. And the stroke dash offset, we just max it out at the very beginning. So if I refresh this page, you'll see that the ring is completely full. but then if you wait 10 seconds, it'll refresh and get the actual data. We could wait here, and then boom, yep, we have the data. But that's just kind of, I'm being a little bit lazy and trying to just test things out to see what I like and what works. And, we have a circle with a fill of none. The stroke is green. This is probably going to be variable. I'd want it to change colors as it gets closer and closer to that max. So maybe at, anything less than a 0.25, it's green. And then 0.25 to like 0.75, we have yellow. And then everything over 0.75 to 1 is red. And that way we kind of have this like arcing, as it fills up, we see the danger and we have some visual indication of like, oh, this is something that I have to monitor, or this is something that I have to go and fix right now. Stroke width of 10. The line cap, these are how I get the little rounded line. So the caps are the ends of the line and I want them rounded. Stroke dash array. This is normally it would be used to make like dotted lines in a path or the arc, but we're kind of maxing it out here. And then we have the offset so that we can kind of make it into a half circle. So in reality, this is a full circle, and you can kind of see it when I refresh the page and everything is maxed out. It's a full circle, but these two variables here, if you calculate them right, this is just the full circumference of the circle, and then the dash offset is, your circumference multiplied by a point value, and then you divide that by 2 to make it into a half circle, right? Half of a circle, and then your half of a circle is also chopped up into even less because we want maybe like half of a circle, or 1/4 of a half of a circle, right? You have your arc, and then you might want a little bit of it, little chunk of it. And we rotate it because if not, it's going to be a circle like that. Sorry, didn't mean to do that. It's going to be a circle like, instead of a circle like that, how we want it. We rotate it 180 degrees and boom, we have our little rainbow arc. And there we go. That is our component, how we do everything. Hopefully that was a little bit informative and you guys learned something from it. I've learned a lot about SVGs throughout this entire feature, and really just how to kind of manage a data pipeline, because it's starting to get very complex of how we go from just an empty blank page to actually rendering what it is we want now, because now we have to go through a whole authentication step, and that stuff needs to be available to us by the time we go and get our data, and then we get our data, and now we also want to start rendering stuff with that data. So it's like, authenticate, go and do our API calls, grab our data, and then render that data. And all these things kind of have to happen in a line. But then you're just thinking about that, but your refresh token might refresh in the middle of a render, and then things might get janky or weird like that. So there's a lot to think about there. I like this kind of use effect mode where I'm kind of, as one thing gets updated and re-rendered, another thing re-renders, but I also don't like it because we're rendering the application 3 different times here, and I'm probably gonna really drill down, maybe do some reading and figure out if this is really the best way to go about it. Right, there we go. So that is the feature for today. Hopefully you guys liked it. If you did, give it a thumbs up down in the like button below. Subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to be doing some more work with this ring, and I'm going to try and get it to do maybe multiple rings and getting different data for different servers. And yeah, leave a comment down below if you liked it. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.